Okay, so next unit, mini unit, fast. We'll get through. This is a little bit trickier sometimes, so pay attention. Centripetal force. The idea is that whenever an object spins around in a circle, there has to be something that is pulling it towards the center. In this example, the lady is pulling it inwards with tension. Here, friction keeps the object from, or the car from spinning out. Some of you guys may have seen people do donuts in the past, or in or around BA. When they lose traction, they kind of spin out and always seem to seek those light posts or houses or trees. It's because they lose the traction and they just go wherever their wheels were pointing last. Okay? Here, the thing that keeps you from just going off into the moon is obviously gravity. And same reason the Earth rotates around the sun, the centripetal or the center seeking force is the gravity from the sun. Okay? The thing about centripetal force is it's not just like some random force like tension applied, gravity, all of that. Instead is the net force, aka the sum of the forces that the object is experiencing. So it can be a single force or it can be multiple forces. Just depends on the scenario. Here you guys can see there is a gravitational force pulling them down. Need a new color. And because they're in contact with the surface, there's a normal force there pulling them down as well. Okay, so quickly, I want you to just try to think about this question. Where do you think you'll experience the largest G-forces in a roller coaster? And we're assuming the centripetal force is the same at both the top and the bottom. Now, if we're looking at this right here, you guys can see the felt force is going to be the centripetal acceleration plus gravity, whereas the felt one here is going to be the centripetal minus gravity. And the reason for that, when we are talking about felt, we're talking about the normal. And in this case, the normal should be bigger to make sure that that net force makes sense. But, you know, what are you going to do? Sometimes graphics don't work perfectly. So this A felt is going to be bigger because we are counteracting gravity to slow us down and allow us to continue forward after the loop is over. Whereas here at the very top, gravity is actually pulling us a little bit off, which causes the normal force to decrease because we're losing a little bit of contact with the surface. Cool. All right. Now, conceptually, I want you to think about an example where you're in a car, your mom turns left, and it's not like a little baby's first turn. It's like a hard left. Like she has to make that light or else y'all are going to be late for soccer practice, okay? So when you turn left in that car, what direction does your body move? And then what keeps you from flying out the car door? And the answers to those two questions are pretty straightforward. So when you turn left, your body is going to slam hard to the right. And you can kind of like think through that scenario. Maybe next time you're driving, make it turn a little bit sharper. You'll feel your body moving in the opposite direction of the way you turn the wheel. And the thing that's keeping you from flying out the car door is the car door itself. So you can see right here, if there was no door or no seatbelt, your body would just go flying out. Whereas here, this keeps you inside the vehicle. Okay, this I'm going to quickly run through just because at this point, hopefully you're better at identifying things. This is gravity. This person is being held against the surface, so that's the normal force. These two pals, best friends, let me draw. All right. They're holding hands. They got, time of their lives. In this scenario, the thing that is pulling them inward is tension from their arms, or applied force, whatever you want to call it. I don't really care. Now the last one, that one is guaranteed to be tension because it is a rope. Don't know why that became a weird thing. So tension is pulling them inward, gravity pulls them down. But key thing to note here, it's not tension specifically that's keeping them pulled towards the center. There is also a force specifically of the X component of tension. So it's that part. It's never at an angle. It's always that part that is perfectly towards the center of whatever they are spinning around. They're not spinning at an angle. They're not spinning like this. They're spinning around the circle in this plane. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't, I can show it to you visually. I was trying to spin my hand, but I have no webcam recording, so that sucks. Now, we can actually talk about this formula. So, when an object is spinning around another one, there is always this center-seeking force and acceleration that is happening. In this example, it's gravity that pulls you towards the center. If we were to speed up or anything like that, then that means we are also going to be speeding up in the direction around the center. So we're speeding up in that tangential velocity. And that means that your actual acceleration is going to be a little bit different. This is very, very hyper specific. So just don't overcomplicate it. Okay? Don't panic. These types of problems are rare, but this is just saying that our net is a little bit off, and that would cause us to start, traveling a little bit further and further and further out. So if we're trying to escape the velocity. But in general, AC is this. Okay, that is always AC. The other one was a very special case. Here, you know what? I'm going to show you the formula. You can probably do it yourself. And I'm just going to plug it in real quick. So it's 27.6 equals VT squared over 26. We multiply by 26, multiply by 26, and then we square root. That's it. This was centripetal acceleration. This was radius. How fast is not W, it is VT. Okay. If we have a problem where there is no tangential velocity given, we need to think about our formulas that we know. We know that circumference is 2 pi r, so that gives us our distance. We know distance is circumference. To get our velocity in general, then we would know that it's going to be distance over time. So that means we're at this step right here. Now, quick question though. If we travel a certain number of revolutions around it, to figure out the number of revolutions involved in it, we would also have to multiply by n. And just to quickly prove to you why, so it's n revolutions. Circumference is 2 pi r. That's meters per revolution divided by time, which is seconds. So the revolutions cancel out and it actually gives us our full value. Okay, because it would give us our total distance. That's all. It's not too complicated. So here, she spins it around. If you've seen softball, they obviously don't spin their arm around more than once. And then she makes a complete spin in 0.3 seconds. So if we are looking for AC, but we don't have R, then oh no, we just have to plug in our formula to solve for VT, which will be 2 pi R over T. So that'll be 2 pi R squared t squared times r. And yeah, you get your answer. That's it. And the thing is, because it's n would also go in there, just so you know. All right. Last kind of like a little conceptual thing before we get into like slightly trickier problems. Why doesn't the ISS fall inward? Well, the main reason is because the ISS actually travels fast enough, and you watch that video from Flipping Physics, you would have seen that when you travel fast enough, you're able to almost like cancel out the inward force of gravity or whatever it is, because you're able to travel fast enough and balance it all out. But if the satellite interacts ever so slightly with the atmosphere, like even a particle or whatever, it's going to start to slow the object down, because the object is going to experience some force. And anytime a force happens, that also means an acceleration occurs. And since it is in the opposite direction of our velocity, that means velocity gets smaller and smaller and smaller over time. Okay? This lady was hit by a rock. She's okay. It was actually space debris, not a rock, but it was from like a broken up satellite. So, just a reminder, if you let go of an object, the object will travel in a straight line because there is no longer that center-seeking force pulling it inward. You can see right here, she lets go of the little hammer throw, and when she lets go of it, it travels in a relatively straight line. Obviously, it's spinning a little bit, but that's just because the object was spinning itself. And here, you can see the person is spinning her arm around, and when she lets go, the object just travels in a straight line. It doesn't go like rear. Instead, goes straight. Okay? And then lastly, I'm just doing some quick trimming of the family tree, you know? Don't want too many branches. So, from here, if we get to this point, if we are traveling in a clockwise direction, that means our velocity is here at that moment. So when we let go, it's going to travel to B. That's all. Okay. This is where questions get a little bit trickier, but I want to just quickly pull our attention back. So if we have 2 revolutions per second, that is telling us our speed. In this case, it's going to be traveling in a straight constant rate. So that is just our only speed. Okay. 0.4, that's coefficient of friction. So if you see coefficient of friction, the alarm bell should be ringing. That might mean we have to look at forces. Okay. And then our mass is 0.05. Okay. So if we have an object on a turntable, we need to do a little force balance, because right here what we are looking for is that radius. So first and foremost, there is gravity. They're on a surface, so that means there's an upward force of from the normal force. And then because there's got to be something keeping him from sliding off, there's no string, no nothing, we know that's got to be friction. Okay? In this case, because the object, we know the net force in the y direction is 0, that's going to mean these 2 forces are equal to each other. So Fn is going to be equal to mg. We know that the force of friction formula looks like this. But because we're at our maximum, we're assuming he can't go any further. We're going to say Ff is equal to mu times Fn, which is mg. And from here, because we're looking for our radius, now we got to think, okay, how do we find radius if we only know our frictional force? Well, we also know that frictional force can be thought of as the centripetal force. So if this is our centripetal force, then we will get m times AC. AC has a formula of Vt squared over r, which will come back over here. So if we have all of that, we can plug in umg is equal to m times vt squared over r. And there you have it. Oh, wait. Something's amiss. There's another formula for AC that we forgot to also pay attention to. So we can also just use this. Okay? You can solve for VT by doing VT is equal to WR. That's fine. But I think it's better to just plug that in naturally. And so we would use this to solve for R. Those cancel out, and then you just plug and chug. Okay? Next problem, honestly, not too bad. I think this one's pretty straightforward. We will just have to look at this. It's spinning at a speed of 17 meters per second. So that's our VT, is 17 meters per second. The length of the rope is about 10, so that's our length. And they're spinning at an angle of 30 degrees. And we're looking for our centripetal acceleration. Okay. Because we know centripetal acceleration, there's really only two formulas. And because we have VT, we're probably not worried about this one. So we're going to focus on this. The trick here is that the radius is not 10. The radius, instead, we have to kind of come to the side, redraw this real quick. We have to realize that our radius is here, which is equal to L sine theta. Okay? Once you have that, you can pretty much solve this question with no real issue. But if you see on your homework or on other problems, sometimes they add a little platform up here like this, and they're like, oh, well, it's R1 and R2. And you just have to add those two for your R. And that's really it. You just get that, plug it in here, plug that in there, and we're good. And if there's that extra one, you plug that in instead. Now, if you're given all of this, but you are not given VT, we have to look at our person over here, and we have to realize that we can also solve for our velocity and centripetal acceleration, all of that. Okay, by doing a little force balance. Okay, so right here we have theta. We know that FC is still T. I'm just gonna write T sine theta. Because it's not moving up and down, we know that the FG is equal to FT cosine theta as well. Those two are the same, so you can easily solve for FT by doing that. And from there, very easily solve for AC because FC is also equal to MAC. You don't even need VT. Alright, the last one, and this is the hardest thing in the world, so bear with me. Alright, it's not the hardest thing in the world, it's just the hardest thing in this unit, so it's really not too bad once you get the hang of it. So if we have our basic setup, we've done this plenty of times. If you're still struggling on it, I just recommend looking at this and actually studying how to draw these little triangles. At this point, this should be kind of muscle memory, but people still make mistakes. Just try to remember. We're looking at this over here. this part right here, that's going to be FG cosine theta. This part right here is going to be FG sine theta. And then the part upwards, that's our normal force. Okay. And there is one more force involved. So if there was no centripetal force, so our net force wasn't here, then we would know that our car would probably just travel in a straight line and fly off the edge. So there also is a frictional force. That frictional force is either going up the ramp or down. And in this case, because the object wants to fly out, it's going to go up and out of the ramp. Friction is actually pointing down, like so. So we have a net force in the X and Y. In the past, when we've done this, we've been able to say that Fn was simply equal to Fg cosine theta, but we know that's not the case because there is a net force pulling us to the left, which means this does not equal 0. So now we just have to set up our little force balance, and because the normal force is pointing in the same direction as the net, we'll say that's a positive. And then Fg is pointing in the opposite, so that means that would be a negative. And over here, we have the x direction. So there's Fg sine theta. There's also friction. And so F net in the x is equal to positive friction plus Fg sine theta. Now, friction we know is also equal to mu times Fn. And then the last thing that we need to keep in mind for this problem is that we also know how to solve for centripetal stuff. So this F net, remember, is Fc. We know Fc is just MAC. And if you're curious, this angle right here, if you ever kind of like looked at this, the whole idea of parallel stuff means that this angle is the same as this angle. And from there, I'm going to leave you to it. I've done the hardest part. All you have to really realize is that there are things that connect both sides of these to solve for any other unknowns. Both Fx and Fy have an Fn. So that should be something that maybe you can rearrange and solve for that. And therefore, you will find your final answer, whatever it may be. Okay, so that's really it. I'll leave some answers in the comments, maybe, I don't know, in the description of the video. I'm tired. I've done this like 4 times because of computer issues. So I'm done. Have fun. Let me know. Take notes. And I'll see y'all in next class. We are ready to learn about gravity. Goodbye.